If we're talking J6, we have to bring in investigative reporter Steve Baker, who happens to be in town. So when he is,
here I am.
J6 is it's about to get going again, Steve. And we have a lot of unanswered questions right now about J6. And it's not just because of the Democrats. There are a lot of squishy Republicans that have stalled investigations. But now, at his own peril, we have a new chairman uncovering how the Biden administration and the deep state pulled a rope-a-dope on the country.
We do have evidence that there were people that were instigating, such as a Metropolitan Police officer that was undercover in plain clothes. The question would be, when we get more evidence of people who are instigating that may be part of the government or may be in law enforcement, were they caught up in the moment, or did they have orders to do this? Was this pre-planned, or is it just something that somebody decided, it would be really good if we could catch some of these MAGA people rioting at the end of 2020, right? Not necessarily thinking they're going to get into the Capitol, but maybe, and this is, one theory we're working on, as we're working on several theories, was this just allowed to play out for political reasons?
All right, we'll get Steve Baker's thoughts on that in just a second. But Congressman Barry Loudermilk, he has some reason why you need to pay attention to Steve himself. Watch.
Independent investigative reporter that's doing tremendous work, much like Steve Baker have been doing.
Thank you.
Has been working on this, and he's gotten more leads than the FBI has.
Yeah.
There you go. He has more leads than the FBI. So, Steve Baker, Barry Loudermilk, what's he saying here?
Well, I actually, after he said that, I've decided that that's going to be on my tombstone. Steve Baker has more leads than the FBI.
Sounds like a line from a rap song.
It might be.
The FBI.
No, I'm very excited about what's happening right now. There's a lot of disappointment. If you go, for instance, after I posted the new press releases about the new committee being formed and all that's going out, I've posted that, and a lot of people are negative. It's like, because we're not seeing. When are you going to start arresting people? When are we going to see the Epstein files? When are we going to see the?
We've seen this film before.
That's right. They've seen it, but Loudermilk is a dog with a bone right now, and he has a personal bone to pick, a burr under his saddle, as they say, related to January 6th, and he is not letting this go. And that's despite the fact he doesn't need to be doing this. He doesn't need to be putting himself out there yet again, because he was the chairman of the Oversight Subcommittee under House administration, and he fought against, sometimes it was the hardest fights that he had was against GOP, against the GOP leadership after the Congress was changed over in January of 23, and they formed this subcommittee to investigate January 6th, and they kept hitting roadblock after roadblock. His own committee chairman, Brian Stile, was constantly throwing up roadblocks against them, whether it was funding, whether it was sometimes not even giving them the room to do their hearings in, things of that nature. And petty things that we may or may not now know the answers to of why those were taking place. But nevertheless, he stepped up once again as taking the reins of this new select subcommittee to investigate January 6th. And he's still getting slings and arrows from the GOP side.
So, let me see if I get this straight. People are, of course, upset because the Republicans already were supposed to have done this.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is, look, Loudermilk is the guy because he fought against the Republicans who said they were going to do it. They didn't actually investigate much. They threw up roadblocks against people who were actually trying to investigate. But now, what's different?
What's different this time is he has the backing of the President of the United States. On January 21st, day after the inauguration, the President told Speaker Johnson, I want a new select committee. And then, of course, in Trump speak, he said to investigate the unselect committee, referring to Pelosi's abomination from the 2 years prior. And he said, that's what I want. And he told Speaker Johnson that, and I want Barry Loudermilk to be the chairman, and I want him to have full subpoena powers, everything. I want him to have every support that you can give him. Yes, sir, Mr. President, we will do that. And then 5 months passed, and it hadn't happened. And the roadblocks were emerging yet again, were being put up by GOP leadership to stop the committee from even being formed. And then if it was formed, it was going to be absolutely neutered to the point of being completely ineffective. And so finally, the congressman, and God bless him, he contacted the president directly. He went straight to the Oval Office. The president was actually shocked and angered that the committee had not yet been formed. He called in Vice President Vance. He called in the general counsel, and he said, "You make this happen." And I can tell you that there was several exchanges that took place, but the most important one was the fact that the general counsel told Congressman Loudermilk, "If you have any more problems with leadership over there, call my phone."
We love action steps here on this show, but you mentioned Nancy Pelosi. And when we talk about Nancy Pelosi and J6, we need to watch this.
It is our duty to find the facts of January 6th to ensure that such an assault on our democracy cannot happen again. And it is also our duty to establish and preserve the narrative of that day.
It's her duty. That was the 1-year anniversary of J6. It doesn't seem like she was trying to live up to the duty and actually get to the bottom of what happened. But what were they actually trying to do when even the Democrats and the RINOs were in charge?
Well, this is the absolute fact. Listen to her own words. And by the way, I was there on the first anniversary. I was there and heard her repeat these words several times that week. This was a pre-planned, prepared sentence that must have been perfectly scripted for her, because she said to establish and then preserve the narrative of that day. And that was what the point of that committee was, which is why in the first place in that committee, if you recall, when our own, when these committees are formed, the majority gets to pick who their representatives are on the committee, and then the minority, which of course at the time was the GOP, gets to pick who their members on the committee will be. Except that this time, and the first time in the entire history of the United States, that didn't happen. When those members were selected by McCarthy, the minority leader at the time, Nancy said no. Mm-hmm. She made her own selection. Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney. I mean, couldn't have been two better Democrats to occupy the two seats that were held by Republicans on that committee.
And they did kind of do their job. They spun a narrative, but that narrative was false. So let's talk about the truth insofar as we know it. I mean, we know something about paid informants being there that day.
Yeah.
And I assume that the subcommittee is going to go after more information about this.
Well, this was one of the things that in this video that we saw with Congressman Loudermilk is he talked about the various things that they're going to be investigating. He was looking at maybe, this being something where they just kind of let it play out the way it would play out. Okay, maybe. And in fact, in the first article I ever wrote, a week after January 6th, I said what I saw was a rope-a-dope maneuver. This is what I saw. Color Revolution kind of rope-a-dope maneuver where the old Muhammad Ali, where he'd let them in a little further, make them think that they, and then kill shot. And when they got them inside the building, that was the kill shot. So how do you get them inside the building? Well, that's where the paid informants come in. That's where the paid CHSs, the paid CHS, confidential human sources, confidential informants. And then we go back to the Aaron Black story, who our source says Aaron had as many as 50 paid provocateurs in the crowd to make that happen. Then we go back to our story about the DEWs, the directed energy weapons, which we're working on, myself and Joe Hanneman are working on right now. We go back to that story where a retired 3-star general told me, yes, that agitation weapon exists, and it's used in color revolutionary situations around the world by our special forces. And he said, with it, we can stop your heart. We can make you blank your pants. And he said, but I wouldn't need that on January 6th. I would just need 4 or 5 of my best guys to make January 6th happen.
That's very chilling. And we have the advantage that we have you here, and you keep us up to date. And you and Joe Hanneman have done excellent work on this, as everybody in the audience already knows. But when we see you around the building, when we get the updates, Steve's excited again because there's actually some light at the end of this tunnel. So what actually gets you excited looking at what is possible right now with Congressman Loudermilk at the head of this new select subcommittee?
This is what I have been told by both Loudermilk, I say both, Loudermilk, members of the DOJ that we're working with and consulting with, and then also with Tulsi's team over at ODNI, who are about to launch their own January 6th investigation. And so being plugged in with all three groups right there, the one thing that we continue to hear from them is that, Steve, all the work you've done for the last 4.5 years, you're finally going to get the missing pieces of the puzzle you've been looking for. And that gets me excited. But more importantly, there is news that is absolutely factual news that we've broken over the last 2 years here at the Blaze that has never been respected by the mainstream media and never been amplified by them. Mm-hmm. And it should have been their job. It should not have been my job as an independent at the time to be investigating the Capitol Police. And yet, I'm the one that was doing it. It should have been the Washington Post. It should have been all of the other major news affiliates that are based out of Washington. They should have been doing that, but they weren't. And because they didn't, and because they can't, and because what I discovered doesn't comport with the narrative that was supposed to be established and approved by Nancy Pelosi, mm-hmm. they ignored our work. Well, I think we're going to get the opportunity to see our work in the committee hearings now. And they won't be able to ignore it this time.
See, this is why we do what we do. I mean, this is why we do what we do. And you just explained, Steve, why we have to do it, because the audience knows the legacy journalists won't do it. But people need to understand that this isn't just some, more rhetoric and letters, strongly worded letters from Congress. This is the product of years of work on your part and others to get here, and people in Congress fighting to actually have accountability. And now we are in position in multiple agencies to actually get the answers to the big questions that a lot of people have out there in the audience as well. And that would include, I would assume, everything from the pipe bombs at the party headquarters. That would include what the hell was going on with Harry Dunn, one of your favorites. What are some of the other questions that would be answered?
Well, again, going back to what Congressman Loudermilk said, we're going to be really looking this time deeply into the CHSs, the confidential human sources that were in the crowd. Now, the FBI has admitted there may have been 24, 27 or something like that. We know that there were a lot more, maybe not just with that agency, but with other agencies as well. Even the ones that they had embedded in the various groups, like, for instance, the Oath Keepers. Mm-hmm. We know for sure. I know because I was the first person to break this story during the Oath Keepers trial that the number 2 man in the Oath Keepers was a paid CHS mm-hmm. of the FBI. And we've got an extensive interview with the founder of the Oath Keepers, which we just recorded last week, that's going to be released here on Blaze very soon. And we talk about that extensively, about that individual, Greg McWhirter. I tweeted it out at 9:30 in the morning that morning that we learned about it in the Twitter storm that I was doing at the time, live from the courtroom. The New York Times, Alan Fuhrer, he then wrote his article that came out later that afternoon. He had a little bigger coverage than I did at the time. But nevertheless, we were the only two that had the story. And in that story, it caused such a disruption in the courtroom that the judge cleared the courtroom the next morning, turned off the media's feed to the media room. And it was incredible, is they turned off the video, but they forgot to turn off the audio. And so all of the reporters are looking at each other inside the media room and started typing. But that was Alan's story and my story that we broke that day. And there are a lot more examples of these types of individuals that were influencing what was happening that day that we're going to learn about through this new committee.
Well, it is exciting to get all of the puzzle pieces that have been missing for so long. We look forward to you and Joe Hanneman's work on this. I know you guys are going to do a great job, but it should be completely unacceptable to everyone in our audience that the RINOs in D.C. already had a crack at this, and nothing came from it. They just instead stood in your way. So at least this time now, Steve, we're going to get a real crack at this one.
I think so. I think we're going to... it would be very easy for me to get emotional about the work that I put in and then to not have the results come forward. But this time, I think we're going to get it. We got the committee with the subpoena power at the behest of the President of the United States, because he's got a burr under his saddle, too.